Greetings programs, welcome to episode 24, Why You Too Can Be a Nazi Monster. Content warning, discussion of murder, rape, other terrible things, and Nazis. So, this is going to be another one of those epistemology and philosophy type videos where we look at something that we think is very obvious and discover that actually no, it's not actually that obvious after all. So, Nazis. What's with those Nazis? Why were they so evil? Godwin's law, here we come. So how could a sane person do all those terrible things, like rounding up Jews and putting them in ovens? They must have been psychopaths, right? Well, no. No doubt, if there were psychopaths in Germany at the time, they would most likely end up working in the camps or somewhere similar, because hey, lots of death and cool stuff like that. Great if you're a psychopath, so I'm told. But no, not everybody who worked in the camps was a psychopath. Most of them were just ordinary people. So what is the story with these ordinary people, with everybody else who wasn't a psychopath? How did everybody else do all the bad things if they were not psychopaths? How did ordinary people end up being able to do bad things like put people in ovens, even though they were human beings, very much like themselves? Well, as discussed in the last episode, our sphere of empathy can be expanded or contracted based on what we know, or what we think we know. Back when we didn't know animals could feel pain and suffer just like us, we could burn cats alive for the entertaining sounds that they made, just like firewood does. And if we happen to think that some group of people really are not people, but are in fact subhuman monsters that are just shaped like people, out to destroy all that we hold dear, then it becomes right to kill them, to brutalize them. Anybody who's a fan of the Supernatural series or Buffy the Vampire Slayer from way back will understand this. Human-sized, human-shaped, kind of a lot like humans, but hey, just go ahead and kill them, okay? This is dehumanization, as discussed last week. When we overlook the similarities between ourselves and focus on the differences. When we think of others as not really people, because they are horrible Jews or gypsies or homeless people or terrorists or whatever. Then we can do the terrible things to them. Because we do not feel compassion for them. Because our circle of empathy does not include them. Either because it never included them, because we were never taught, or it has been withdrawn from them by a process of dehumanization. What is dehumanization? Well, it's when we tell ourselves, or we are told and we believe, that this person isn't truly human. That they are not a person like ourselves, with some good qualities and some bad qualities, with feelings like anybody else. No, they're terrible, they're monstrous, they're cockroaches, they're scum, they're vermin, that kind of stuff. Once we go through this process of thinking of them as not real people, then it becomes easy to stomp on them, like bugs. You don't feel bad about squashing an ant or a cockroach or whatever. In fact, you may enjoy it, doing some good in the world. Same kind of thing here. When you turn a person into a thing, then it becomes okay to do whatever you need to do to that thing. They're not people. But what does this mean? Well, when somebody does something horrible or monstrous, it may not mean that they are insane. It may simply mean that they are acting rationally, but doing so from a perspective that you don't understand. Or they are operating from information that you don't know. For example, if you see a terrified dark-skinned man running from a white man, and the man then shoots him in the back, you may think that this is a terrible, racially motivated crime. But if it turns out that the first man had a detonator in his hand, and the other man was a government agent, then this is not a crime, but suddenly it becomes the prevention of one. And this, by the way, is a lovely example of a thing called a paradigm shift. When suddenly the context changes. Not what you saw, but what you thought about what you saw. If the other person is in possession of information that you lack, or is wrong but is convinced, then they can act monstrously and yet be perfectly rational. Which is just one reason that we need to spread information, knowledge, and yeah, even science. Here's the thing. If you think that your child is a witch, or is possessed by demons, and that killing them in the name of God is the only way to save their immortal soul, then it would be entirely logical to kill your child in the name of God. Just like it would be entirely reasonable if you encountered a rabid animal that threatened your family, it would be sensible, even reasonable, to exterminate the animal. And if you think of a group of people in the same way, it will be entirely reasonable to do the same to them. After all, they are a threat. So, some monstrous acts are entirely rational responses from people who are operating by sets of rules that you do not share. And while indeed it is possible that performing these acts can harden them and make them callous, and thus make them more prone to do further bad things, it is the placing of people outside the circle of empathy that starts the ball rolling. And this is one of the problems that you can see in less dramatic situations, such as the abortion debate. Those on the pro-choice side of the fence can proceed from one of several points of view, more than what I shall list, but these are just some that are common. One point of view is that the fetus is not a person capable of suffering, and thus abortion is not an issue. Another position is that this is simply a matter of rights, and the rights of people who actually exist take precedence over people that only potentially exist. And the third option is, if it's not your womb, it's not your business. Now, whether you agree or not, if any of these points of view are in fact correct in their details, then the follow-on from that, the logical follow-on, is that abortion is fine. Now, if the opposing point of view, the one most commonly put forth by the anti-choice side of the fence, is correct, that a fetus is a person, and that killing a person is murder and thus wrong, then it is entirely reasonable to be against abortion. And this is why, if you go on any kind of forum with an attempt at discussion, you will see that there is a very strong tendency for each side to consider the other side to be monstrous. How dare they murder innocent babies, they say. And the other side says, how dare they take a woman's rights from her, all in favour of a lump of unfeeling flesh. How terrible. Now, as it happens, the same sort of thing goes for racists, those terrible people that are often likened to Nazis. It's so easy to just assume they're just stupid, they're just wrong. But think of it from their point of view. If black people really, somehow, are lesser than white people, then it does make sense that white people should have more privileges and responsibilities than black people, in roughly the same way that we take the concerns of humans more seriously than those of animals. And thus, while we may think they are awful people, they are not monsters. They are acting rationally based on their point of view, based on the information that they have, or the situation that they've convinced themselves that they have, however wrong we may think they are. So, with very rare exceptions for psychopaths and sociopaths, people acting like monsters may actually be acting rationally, but their information, or their point of view, or their understanding of the world may differ wildly from yours. It doesn't automatically make them wrong, nor does it automatically make them right. It just means that we need to understand them and where they are coming from, and not simply assume they are simple monsters and their point of view can be ignored and is not worth consideration. If you knew what they knew, if you believed what they believed, then in all likelihood you would be doing what they are doing. You too could be a Nazi if you lived in a Nazi place and believed Nazi beliefs. Because most Nazis were just people like you. They just knew things that you don't know and believed things that you don't believe. Well, that's all for now. I think I'm getting better at this getting to the point thing and keeping these things short. Tune in for next week on why corporations are evil and will kill us all, which, incredibly, follows on from this. And no, I won't be telling you that corporations are Nazis. They are, in fact, actually worse. Bye for now.